Hi and welcome back to another edition of STS Knows Best. I am your Stake Technology Specialist, Jared, and today we're going to talk about a way to make sure that your broadcast computer can be easily shared with other wards or other units. So in the past videos I've done, I've shown you how to set up OBS, how to get all the scenes working, get the cameras integrated, get the audio looking good. But one of the things that we've also talked about is the on-screen text and how to customize scenes to your liking. And that's all well and good if you're the only unit or ward or the person using that computer. But in a lot of cases, you're going to have 3, maybe even 4 wards or 4 units that are all going to be sharing the same broadcast computer. So in my stake, for example, there are 3 wards in the building, plus the stake has its own events. So that's 4 different units that are going to be sharing the same device when they do broadcasting. We want to make sure that this device is not something that is going to be a source of contention. So one of the tricks that I want to share today is how to set up multiple scene collections. So every unit can have their own scene collection so it doesn't interfere with what the other wards want to do when they're having their broadcasts. So I've already taken the liberty of setting up my basic setup here. So as you can see, I've got my preview scene right now. My sort of welcome scene is on the side. I'll move that down just a little. And then I have my program over here. It's an empty chapel right now. And I've got this set up for one particular ward. I just made up a number, 18th ward. So here we have the 18th ward, and they have their welcome screen that says their ward name. I've got my main, which is just the chapel camera. And then I have my main 2, and I talked about making a main tune earlier, so if you want to transition to names of individuals. So we've got that ready to go. But what's going to happen when you have the next ward who wants to do their thing? Then you're going to have to either, and this is what I've seen other wards do, and I'm trying to move away from this, is they'll set up their own separate scene that says like 30th ward scene, and then, or ward welcome. And then you have this like long list of scenes with every ward having their own one. I don't recommend that. And then if anyone makes a change to one, it affects everybody. It's just a bad way to go. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to go into scene collection. And by default, you're probably just going to have one scene, and it's probably going to be called default. First thing I want to do is I want to rename this, because I want to remember that I've made this particular scene for, in this example, 18th ward. So we'll just call this 18th ward scenes. All right, now I've got that done. Now, I have put a lot of work into curating this collection of scenes and sources, and I do not want to have to recreate everything from scratch. Well, you don't have to. That's the nice thing about how this system works. So instead, all I need to do is go to Scene Collection and hit Duplicate. Now, when I duplicate it, it's going to ask me to give it a new name, and the example I used was 30th, so I'll just say 30th Ward Scenes. So now I have an exact duplicate, but it's called 30th Ward Scenes. Now this is where I can start making any changes I want. So here I have this thing that says 18th Ward. I'm going to go here and I'm going to change it to say 30th. Now it still says on the screen, you can see in my preview here, it says 30th Ward, but down here under source name, it's still called the 18th Ward. And that's because the name you give the source is not an indication of what the contents of the source are. This is just a name, that's the text. So if you want to say the same thing in both places, you will have to rename the source name as well. Another way you can avoid this is if you really want to, you could just say ward name. But I find it's a one-time change once it's set up, and it's nicer to know what the text actually is by making the name of the source match the text, at least somewhat. So anyway, that was not that hard. I fixed it in both places, and that's done. So now you're probably thinking, well, I changed this source. What's going to happen to the other scene collection? So right here, I'm in my 30th ward, and also if you look at the top, up at the top of the bar, it'll say Profile Untitled and Scene Collection 30th Ward Scenes. So you can always check really quickly too to see what scene you're in. If you go to the Scene Collection drop-down, I'm going to switch back to 18th, and you will see that it has not affected the text for this. Now, you might remember earlier I said that if someone changes a source in one scene, it'll affect it in all of the other scenes. That's only true if they're in the same collection. So if I was to, because right here in the hold, I have the word sacrament meeting. That's the same source that I'm using on the welcome screen. So if I change it there, it will change in both places, but only within the same scene. So I'm going to go back to my 30th ward scene, and you'll see that this set of sources and the names and the contents are not affected across the board. So that makes things really nice, really easy. So now that I've got that done, let's go into, I deleted, and I might have done this in an earlier video, I don't like having all of the text of all the names filling up my main. I want that in main 2. So anywhere I'm going to have text, I'm going to have it in main 2. Now I'm going to rename this from 18th Ward Bishop to, and again, this is the kind of thing that I could actually just say Bishop. I don't even need the name of the ward in there, so we'll do that. And then I did have the contents here. Let's change that to 30th, and I don't know what name I'm going to make up for this one. Greg Smith, I guess. And so now I've gotten that fixed up, and make sure I have my double spaces on there so it looks clean. Okay, and then same thing here with first counselor, and you don't even have to have it visible to make these changes, by the way. I'm just going to make these changes still being hidden. Okay, so now I've got the first counselor. Double click on that to bring it up and make this Matt. We already have a Smith. Matt Brown will be our first counselor. And then I'm going to, first counselor. And then here I'm going to rename this to second counselor. And I'll just take the whole number out altogether just to make things easier. And this one's name is Ammon Jones. And these are not centered very well. You should really make sure you make them look nice and centered like I'm doing now so they look better on the screen. Okay. And the welcome screen. Oh, and I didn't change the name of the scene here, so let me just change that real quick too, just to remove any doubt here. So rename 18th Ward Welcome to 30th. And I could just say Ward Welcome or Welcome Side or Welcome Scene. I do like to keep it here as 30th just because I find that when multiple wards are sharing the same computer and they're switching back and forth between scenes, some indications that are just easy to pop out at you, like the welcome screen here or the name right here, the first scene in the top corner. If you see your ward number there or ward name there, you know it's yours quickly. If you don't, you know it's the other wards, and it's very easy to switch back and forth. So now I'll go back to my 18th ward scenes, and now I've got my 18th ward good to go. I've got everything loaded up. Nothing has changed here. And then scene collection, switch, 30th ward, good to go. See how quick and easy that is? So one ward in the morning can set up the computer in the chapel or wherever you have your setup, and then they'll do their broadcast. When they're done with their broadcast, they can just end the Zoom call, sign out of Zoom, and then the next ward comes in, switches to their scene collection, and then they fire up their Zoom on the same computer. You don't have to worry about set down or take up for every single ward. The last ward at the end of the day then packs up the equipment and puts it in whatever the designated spot is. The nice thing too is you don't have to go to File and Save to save the changes you've made to your scene collection. These changes are automatically the same. If I was to close out OBS right now and then open it up again next Sunday, you're good to go. The scenes will still be there. But I do want to recommend one other thing you should do is you should back these up. Sometimes if you have someone visiting or you're sick and so you have someone filling in for you, they might be making some changes to your scene collection that you don't want them making changes to. Or sometimes computers crash and you can rebuild all of the work that we've done, all of the settings we've made. It's a lot of work to set this all up from scratch again. Even on a speed run that I've done 100 times on, well, not exactly, but I've done a lot of these installs, it still takes me more than half an hour of concerted straight effort, and maybe even almost an hour to really polish off a really nice OBS setup for a unit. Well, it'd be a lot faster if I could just restore from a backup. And that's going to be also in Scene Collection. And if you go to Export, so you have Import and Export. Find the one you want to back up. So in this case, I'll do 61st because I'm there. I'm going to go to Export. And again, I like to back these up in a place that is accessible to anyone who should have access to that. So the broadcast, public documents, not downloads. Public documents is where I like to put that. I have a broadcast folder inside of there and an OBS presets. And in there is where I'll save my scenes. The default name will be whatever you called that scene. It's a .json file, so yeah, I'm just gonna save that there. You saw some old ones in there from before. I'm not using those anymore. They just kind of have been persistent. Now that only backed up the one that I was in. So if I want to back up my 30th one, I have to do the same thing. Export, go to the same location I was before, which is under Public Documents, Broadcasts, OBS Presets, Save. Now, if anything changes, or if I'm restoring setting up a new computer, you can, as long as you make sure your sources are in the same path. So if you're always using public user, public documents, broadcast folder, if you keep all your sources in the same file location, then when you restore a scene collection, even on a new computer, oh, it's so fast. Everything just comes right in. If you do, for whatever reason, need to point to sources that are not in the same directory or same path, it's a quick and easy fix, but a subject for another video. A couple other caveats that you should know before you implement this. Some of the things that you change can affect others, so do keep that in mind. For example, the PTZ controls and the camera sources, those changes will affect across the board. So if I start changing my PTZ shortcuts here, so if I have the preset for changing all these different preset configurations here, that will absolutely affect everybody because this is not part of your scenes. Presets on PTZ cameras are stored on the camera. Any changes you make here are persistent. If you rename these shortcuts, if you make any changes like that, those will persist across. Also, system settings. So if you go into your system settings here, all of these system settings, they do affect everybody across the board. So be careful with that. When you're making changes for your unit, don't touch the PTZ stuff unless you want it to be changed for everybody, and don't touch the system settings. Only the stuff involved with your scenes and your sources in those scenes. Now is probably a good time to also talk about backing up your profiles versus your scene collections. So if we're backing up our scene collections, that's what we kind of covered earlier. What about profiles? Well, profiles are not the same thing as scene collections. I recommend not dealing with multiple profiles. Really just dealing with scene collections is a much easier way to go for wards, and it's quicker and easier for transition's sake. Profiles, however, are probably grayed out if you're doing broadcasts. You can see right here they are. If your virtual camera is enabled, profiles is grayed out. You cannot swap any of those on the fly. So I'm going to stop my virtual camera. Now I can go to profile and I can set up new profiles. Profiles are going to give you a lot more things that you can change that won't affect other wards, like your system settings. Although I know that sounds attractive, like, oh, well then I can change even more things without affecting another ward. I don't recommend doing that. One of the reasons, like I'd mentioned, is with profiles, you cannot change it on the fly if you are in a broadcast. If you're in a ward and you are broadcasting and you realize, oops, I'm in the wrong scene, it's easy to just swap between scene collections. You can actually swap scene collections in the middle of a stream. It's very seamless. People on the viewing end don't even really notice what's going on, except for the fact that your program might change. But if you really want to start playing with profiles, you can. Just remember, you can't do anything with profiles while your virtual camera is enabled. So that was it, quick and easy, but I hope you found it quite useful. I know it's been very useful in our steak, and I hope you can implement something simple for yours as well. This has been another quick tip from your STS steak technology specialist. STS knows best, and I hope to see you in a future video. Thanks again.